Oklahoma State Racing Commission, one as close as Manford. President Reagan is in New York today to speak to United Nations delegates and to meet with Soviet leaders.
And here in Tulsa, Halloween merchants offer safe tips for trick-or-treating. We'll have those stories plus today's Doctor on Call segment next on Eyewitness News.
If you were thinking about changing the tires...
You may believe these always delicious, always in season. VIP frozen vegetables are naturally low in calories. So for your good health, pick up nature's natural light food. VIP frozen vegetables, they are fresher than fresh.
The spirit of Oklahoma on 6.
This is Channel 6 Eyewitness News, live at 5. With Joe Webb, Jill Lyon, meteorologist Tony Shelton, and Bill Teagan, sports.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. 3 racetrack applicants are still in the race for a major parimutuel track for Oklahoma. The State Horse Racing Commission is giving applicants from Manford, Enid, and Oklahoma City till November 8th to complete their applications. A 4th contender from Marietta will go after a non-major.
An Oklahoma law enforcement officer who was missing and then found yesterday was terminated today by the Okfuskee County Sheriff's Department. The search for Officer Wallace Delmer Townsend started Monday night when his wife reported him missing. More than 24 lawmen searched all night in the Paden, Oklahoma area, where Townsend is also the police chief. But the search ended when Townsend was found more than 150 miles away in Jay, Oklahoma. According to the Delaware County Sheriff, Townsend was visiting with a woman he was engaged to more than 10 years ago. Townsend has also been suspended as the police chief of Paden. Here are the top national and international stories for this Wednesday, October 23rd. President Reagan is changing his plans for his trip to New York this week. Reagan will speak to the United Nations General Assembly tomorrow as part of celebrations marking the
Reagan administration is warning Congress that without some kind of action on the national debt, the federal government will absolutely, positively run out of money on November 15th. They're calling it Drop Dead Day. The administration is pressuring Congress to pass a bill allowing the government to go over $2 trillion in debt. Since September, Congress has been delaying action on the national debt. A bill now being worked on includes an amendment calling for a balanced budget by 1991. And that's slowing down its progress as congressional negotiators try to work out some sort of compromise. For the 5th straight month, the Consumer Price Index rose in September only 1/5 of a point, mainly due to falling transportation costs. Gasoline, used cars, and auto financing all cost less last month. However, food prices were up by the highest margin since last February. The small gain in consumer prices was enough to trigger automatic cost of living increases in Social Security benefits for next year, and officials are now able to index federal income tax tables. That means individual tax exemptions and standard deductions will be increased for next year to cover the effects of the inflation.
The strike by 70,000 United Auto Workers against Chrysler Corporation.
Castle Hall trustees of
Special kind of inspiration, moving us along.
This is Charlie Derrick on FM 96 KRAV. Listen Thursday mornings at 7:20 to win a great getaway to places like Germany, London, or Paris on FM 96.
You are the reason we are KRAV.
We said we would, we did. Our 6.6 beat GM 7.7. Ford and Chrysler too.
Crime and give Americans more time after work for outdoor activities. Those against the bill are worried about school children and farmers having to begin their days in darkness. In order for the new formula to go into effect next year, it would have to pass Congress and the President by the end of December. And boy, I don't think that one went home too well. I hope somebody understands that, because I'm going to have to read through that to make sure if I understand it.
I think what it means is they want to start it 3 weeks earlier and end it 1 week later. So it'll actually end up being a month longer than it is
that
now.
would start daylight savings time a month early and end it 1 week later. I just thought it meant that we'd only have 1 week of daylight savings time.
And after all that, there's a possibility it still might not pass. So it's still mute at this point. But it would mean more sun in the summer, of course. But it would be a little harder on the kids and the farmers that have to get up early. So.
It wouldn't mean more sun in the summer. We'd still have the same amount of sun, wouldn't we?
Well, that's true. That's a good point, but most of us would get to see more.
How
of it.
much sun are we going to have tomorrow?
That's the main question here.
I think we better get off this story, folks. We're going to have plenty of sun tomorrow. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and it has been a pretty good day. Started out on the cloudy side. Let's see what it looked like not too long ago down at Tracy Park on 11th and Peoria. The begonias, the beautiful red begonias you see there at the fountain, got plenty of rain earlier this week, and they began to catch up on a little bit of the sunshine this afternoon. Outside right now, we're in pretty good shape. You have a hard time really finding any clouds. Our temperature is a nice mild 80 degrees. There's the relative humidity, 58%, beginning to dry out just a little bit. Barometric pressure, 29, 79 and falling. And the winds continue to be a little gusty at times. They're right now from the south at 14 miles per hour. The national satellite, first of all, shows, well, the clouds that passed through earlier today now moving on to the east, along with some pretty heavy rainfall down in portions of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. But when you look back to the west, you find a few light clouds in Colorado and the panhandle portion of Texas and Oklahoma. But it looks like it's going to be a pretty good weekend at this point, as no real rain is forecast to develop anywhere to the southwest. Let's look at national radar right now and see exactly where the rain is. Most of it, as I mentioned, to our south. Earlier this afternoon, about 1 o'clock or so, we were picking up some very light showers just to the west of Fort Smith on our radar, but they've since dissipated. And so even if you're going to be traveling over into Arkansas this weekend, see any football games or anything, it should be pretty nice. This is snow up here in Colorado and Montana. It was heavier today up around West Yellowstone National Park, and so those folks are going to be planning on some snowfall for the next 5 or 6 hours. Let's turn our attention now to the regional satellite view. It's got the temperatures on it at the present time, 79 in Oklahoma City, 71 in Wichita, 80 degrees down at DFW, a little cooler over in St. Louis, 68 degrees now. It'll probably be about like that at game time. There should be cloudy skies, but a very slim chance of rainfall, so the World Series should not be really affected by any precipitation tonight. Lows tonight from around the country look like this. There we go. Morning lows tomorrow morning will be in the 50s just as they were this morning. Not a big change in temperatures. We do have a front that's going to come through the area later on tonight. That's going to cool things down just a little bit, but it is a Pacific front, so don't look for any major changes in temperature. When you get up in the mountains, though, there's where that snow's at up in Montana. They'll be in the 20s tonight, and some of those 20s will drift down into Colorado. Here's what the forecast map looks like for tomorrow. Sunshine all across green country. High pressure should stay with us for a good while. Let's take a look at the forecast. First of all, for tonight. Looks like it's going to be a nice evening. Partly cloudy skies, a low of about 54 degrees. Tomorrow, not bad at all. Tomorrow will be sunny with a high of 75, and for tomorrow night, clear skies, a little cooler than tonight, with a low temperature of about 50 degrees. Jim Giles will be back with a close look at the weekend, but I tell you what, gang, Joe, I'll give you a hint. It looks pretty good. I'll just give you that little hint. He'll be back with a complete look at the weekend at 6 o'clock.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Experts agree that if a divorced parent threatens to take his or her child, an abduction usually follows. The Missing Children Network urges you to keep vital information on hand about your ex-spouse and call the network if your child becomes a victim of a parental abduction. Mary Grady has more in today's Missing Children Report.
Sisters Brandy Angel and Crystal Doralton were abducted from Shreveport, Louisiana in May of this year. Brandy is 5 years old. She has dark brown hair and brown eyes. Crystal is 3 years old. She has red hair, hazel eyes, and freckles. 4-year-old Angel has black hair and brown eyes. If you need help locating a missing child, or if you know the whereabouts of sisters Brandy, Angel, Crystal, or any child, call the Missing Children Network toll-free hotline at 1-800-235-3535. All calls are confidential. Today's Missing Children Report is a joint effort of Eyewitness News and your local Pizza Hut, where you can find more information about today's missing children.
Up next in the HealthCast, Anita Parvin will report on this week's annual conference on aging and a controversy about a new Medicare payment program.
Magnificent, tender rack of lamb. It's one of the reasons Crickett's Restaurant in Chicago is world...
And relief of pain. Crohn's disease.
Doctors don't know what causes the disease, but heredity does play a part in the development of Crohn's disease. It can affect any part of the digestive system, but usually strikes the colon or the lower part of the small intestine. It causes the tissue to swell and become inflamed, bringing on extremely uncomfortable symptoms. Diarrhea is one of those symptoms, along with severe abdominal pain. In addition, the patient is often deprived of nutrition because the intestines cannot absorb nutrients properly. Dr. Norman Simon has treated many cases of Crohn's disease in Tulsa.
If the intestine is inflamed, it can't function properly. If it can't function properly, they don't take up all the calories that they consume, and as a result, they may have difficulty maintaining their weight, and in fact, they may lose a great deal of weight. And when you lose weight and nutrition, you also become quite weakened. Over the last 15 years or so, there has been a striking increase in the number of patients being found with this disease.
There's no explanation for that increase and really no cure for Crohn's. Medication is used to try to control the symptoms. Some patients find that eliminating certain foods from the diet helps, but that's usually only a minor part of the treatment. Surgery is a last resort. It may take care of Crohn's for a while, but the disease is likely to pop up again at another location in the digestive tract. Since Dr. On Call is a forum for your questions, we encourage you to write. There's the address on the screen, Dr. On Call here at KOTV, Post Office Box 6, Tulsa, and the zip code is 74101. We'd like to hear from you. Senior citizens from the area gathered at the Tulsa County. Your artificial heart patient in Pennsylvania is awake and alert today, and that's a big improvement over yesterday. Doctors believe spasms in the blood vessels in the brain caused Anthony Mandia to slip in and out of consciousness during the day yesterday. They don't know if that problem is related to the Penn State artificial heart. The U.S. Senate has voted to put new taxes on snuff and chewing tobacco. The House of Representatives has not yet voted on that plan, but a House subcommittee did approve a bill today, smokeless tobacco cans, and also on any print advertising. That same bill would also ban advertising altogether on radio and television. Jill.
Well, of course, we've had labels on cigarette packs for years, but there has been some controversy on just how harmful or if smokeless tobacco is really harmful.
There has been a controversy. Medical authorities say, however, that the health risks are well documented. The use of smokeless tobacco, according to research, is connected with a number of ailments, including oral cancer, which is indeed a serious one. Doesn't make the issue politically popular right now, though, and there are indications that the ban on advertising, especially on TV and radio, is probably going to meet quite a bit of opposition on the floor of the House if it gets that far.
So exactly where in the process is it now?
Still in a subcommittee. It has to go to a committee, and then they may release it to the full House. Certainly a controversial issue, and as you recall, a woman from Ada, Oklahoma has filed suit against the manufacturers of smokeless tobacco in connection with the death of her son.
So it'll be still a while, if there is a ban, before we'll stop seeing Skoal commercials and so on the air. Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Anita. Joe?
A Massachusetts judge has made a ruling on a right-to-die case that should be of interest to Oklahomans who are considering the so-called living will. Here's Clayton Vaughn with tonight's commentary.
The case in Boston involves a firefighter, Paul Brophy, who had a stroke in mid-1983 and then went into a coma, from which he has not recovered. After the stroke, a feeding tube was attached to his stomach. That's how he's fed. His family asked the court to allow the tube to be disconnected, but the judge ruled that it could not be. Brophy will therefore remain as he is, with profound brain damage and in a vegetative state until he dies. And the experts say that could be decades. There is no hope for recovery. The case apparently draws the line on where a life of whatever state must be saved, and that line right now is at the feeding tube. Brophy is not brain dead. There is some bodily function remaining. He breathes on his own, for example. But profound brain damage, in this case, evidently means that the brain stem, the so-called reptilian brain, is the only part working. The relation of the case to Oklahoma's new living will is clear, because that document does not allow stopping food supplies. This is another of those excruciating problems with which we are going to have to deal now that medical science is capable of maintaining some type of life in the human form, although not the type of life that most of us would consider worth living.
Sutherland's has energy-saving values you can really warm up to.
Everybody, a year ago. Mark Concannon has a report.
ES News.
You know, the NBA is going to be interesting this year, of course. Wayman Tisdale's up there, and a lot of young, new talent, and I think it's good for the league.
Yeah. Also, some great old Roughnecks playing in that soccer game.
Yeah, it's always nice. Terry Hennessy is the general manager over there at Soccer for Fun. He's the one that's getting this going, and so it's nice to see all the, well, there's about 3 or 4 ex-coaches with Terry, Charlie Mitchell, and Kevin Egan, and Steve Earle.
Just some great old players, and Iraj, all those players that were so fun to watch 4 or 5 years ago.
See them indoors. Coming up at 6, we're going to preview the OSU-Kansas football game, which is coming up this weekend as the Big 8 season really gets going. That's coming up at 6 o'clock.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
You bet.
Joe?
When we come back, we'll look ahead to the 6 o'clock report, and we'll give you a few pointers on safe Halloween costumes for kids.
Clothing for Eyewitness News provided by Harold's.
I'm a volunteer docent at the zoo. Docent is a word that means teacher. To be a docent, I think you have to love people. You have to love animals. You have to learn with the older people not to be afraid to reach out and take their hand.
Don't be afraid to lend your hand.
A lot of people, when you hold their hand, they'll touch these animals.
People helping people everywhere. Everyday people.
It gives me the opportunity to have my faith in people renewed. The more we understand something, the less we're frightened by it.
Okay.
I get a lot from what I do at the zoo.
People helping people everywhere. Kerr-McGee people.
I'm Mary Connor, Systems Analyst for Kerr-McGee.
People like you who care. S-I-G-A.
In a little over 30 minutes is the KOTV 6 o'clock report. Clayton Vaughn is in the newsroom with the top stories. Clayton?
Thank you, Jill. Tonight at 6, we'll be talking with officials of a local coal mining company who are being sued. The company is being sued, I should say, for allegedly ignoring federal land reclamation laws. We'll also hear from Tulsa school board officials on a challenge of new state open records laws. And Broken Arrow officials, school officials, say they will ask for several $1 million in school improvement bonds this coming December. We'll look into that. We'll have those stories and more coming up on the 6 o'clock report. Jill?
Thank you, Clayton. Well, Halloween is just about a week away. While it's a favorite holiday for children, it can be a nervous time for parents. Tonight, Mary Grady takes a look at how to safely dress your child for trick-or-treating.
Halloween is a holiday favorite of...
Oh, Bill, you're the only one of us with children, and what are you going to be dressing up your young
She's going to be a witch. Sounds awful, doesn't it? But we've got the paint we're going to put on her face and everything, so she's all ready. Yeah.
Sounds
I
good.
haven't decided what I'm going to be yet, but I got a couple of days.
Well, we can always put you in convict stripes or something appropriate. Anybody else here going to be dressing up or anything?
I hadn't really planned on anything. I think I'm scary enough looking as it is.
No comment.
Okay, we'll let that one ride. Well, that's our news for this Wednesday. Dan Rather's next, followed by the 6 o'clock report with Clayton, Jim Giles, and Bill Tiggins. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.